Say that I also learn from this dialogue with Christians, because as Samka said, my focus, my main reference, if you want, is Nietzsche. I would today say Nietzsche Spinoza. And there are troubling aspects of Nietzsche's philosophy, and there are troubling aspects of Spinoza's philosophy. And I think that it's healthy to be reminded that there are other ways of thinking about these profound philosophical questions. So I think it's possible for an atheist to learn from a dialogue that is respectful, a dialogue that, in the words of a very good philosopher, William Connolly, is a dialogue conducted with agonistic respect. Agonistic respect means that you don't try to convince the other, you don't try to arrive at some neutral consensus. No, you hold on to the difference, you respect the differences, but you try to enter into that difference. And in making that attempt to enter into the other, the radically different from you, you might be alerted to the other in you, the radically different within you. This is sort of the philosophical and the existential message that I think that dialogue can do. I think I'll stop at that.
Thank you very much, Béla. I'm really glad that this lecture has been taped. And if you know Béla, a few days ago, he would still wouldn't know what he was going to talk about.
I didn't know this morning.
And well, maybe even after. And yet I really enjoyed it tremendously as ever from what you said. I'm really glad that we have it taped, and if we transcribe it, we have a long essay for Kritika Kontext. But he gives this lecture also needs a feedback, needs a critical, agonistic.
Well, it could be agonistic or not.
Could be.
But I tell you quite selfishly, there will be a piece in this issue on secularism by me, and so this is the part of that process. And if I could get feedback from you, that would be wonderful for me. Feedback, in other words, from the readers of Kritika, because that's what I have to tune myself to, the reader of Kritika.
Okay, so comments, questions before I'll be happy to ask. Matthew?
If I remember correctly, at a certain point you were talking about dissatisfaction with that both Taylor and yourself share with the new atheists, in that it doesn't seem entirely fair to think that human agency or free agency can be explained naturalistically.
Yes.
Okay. So my question then is, are you familiar with Dennett's work, Freedom Evolves? Because I haven't read it myself, but I know that he tries to...
I'm aware of it, but I have to be honest that I have not... When I read a book, I really read it very intensely, and I have not read it that way. But why do you raise the question?
Oh, because it's long struck me that, not being profoundly familiar with these guys, that they have to make some room for freedom at some point, because you end up in this problem where you say, well, the religious believer, due to genetic causes, evolutionary causes, ultimately physical causes, it determines them to believe in religion. And I just don't see why that same argument doesn't apply to science. Well, science is proven. No, you are determined to believe that science proves.
Yes.
And so they need to come up with some account of freedom, but I frankly just don't know what it is. I've heard that Dennett has attempted to give one, but...
Maybe I went too quickly, but I think my example, remember, of it does go some way toward that, but I think it has to be fleshed out much more. But I think that I couldn't integrate this into my paper, so I'm going to use this occasion to put it out. I think that Illich, and by implication Taylor, are quite close to what is called the death of God theology, or the Christian atheist. And one of the main proponents of this view is Thomas Altheimer, who is very strongly influenced by both Nietzsche and Hegel, and he manages to integrate the two. And his view is very radical. His view is that at the crucifixion, God died. The God of ancient ontotheology has died, and God is resurrected as a living God who's a suffering God, who is an open God, which is to say that God, or the infinite, or the divine person, however you want to, is also exposed to history. And that's a very Hegelian view. That's exactly why Hegel thinks that Christianity is the highest form of religion, because when he talks about Christian love, he also means that God has become flesh. So the whole story of the crucifixion and incarnation, as he sees it, that's the old pagan, ancient conception of God as some formidable other being that dies and is resurrected in Christ, which is resurrected as human, if you wish, resurrected as history. It's a very interesting, because it has an open conception of theology. That's why I think that Illich and Taylor might be close to this, even though they would never talk about death of God theology or atheists. Although there's a Catholic, I just found out there's a Jesuit who calls himself a Christian atheist, and he hasn't been kicked out yet. So, but it's to me, this is the thing that with the new theology. The new theology is a theology that responds to the immanent frame, if you want, responds to the world in which we live, and tries to make sense of it. And I mean, as you could tell from my talk, the only way I can relate to that in any way is through this notion of agape, and it probably because I'm such a deficient person that I'm so incapable of it. You understand?